in the section of aircraft material and processes, ferrous metal. Ferrous metal have been introduced earlier also in the first section, but here in this in more detail. Any metal which contain iron and its chief constituents is known as ferrous metal. In aircraft structure, we are chiefly concerned with steel, which is iron with a controlled amount of carbon added. Now A. Iron. Iron is a chemical element which in its pure form is a fairly soft, malleable and ductile metal that is easy to form or shape. It is silvery white in color and is quite heavy. Having a density of 7.9, iron readily combines with oxygen to form iron oxide, which is more commonly known as rust. In practical use, we seldom see pure iron, but rather see it mixed various forms of carbon and other alloying agents or impurities. When iron is poured from the furnace into molds, it is known as cast iron. It normally contains more than 2% carbon and it usually has silicon mixed in it. Cast iron is seldom used in aircraft construction because of its low strength to weight ratio. But there are some applications in engine manufacturing such as valve guides where its porosity allows it to hold a lubricant film. It also has good wear characteristics which are important in the application. Grey cast iron is also familiar to us in engine maintenance as the brittle material of which piston rings are made. Iron is obtained from ore, a form of iron oxide, by mixing the ore with a coke and limestone and passing extremely hot air through the mixture. The coke burns and forms superheated carbon monoxide, which absorbs much of the oxygen from the ore, and the molten iron drops to the bottom of the furnace. The limestone reacts with the impurities in the iron and the coke to form a slag, which floats on top of the molten iron and is poured off from the iron. When the iron is removed from the furnace, it is in the form known as pig iron. It may be remelted and cast into cast iron components, or it may be taken to some of the steel making furnaces or converters to convert the iron into steel. Now, steel. Pig iron from the blast furnace is remelted in a special furnace where oxygen is forced through the molten metal so that oxygen can unite with the carbon and burn it out. When the carbon is burned out, a controlled amount of carbon is put back in along with other elements that are needed to get the particular characteristic of steel we want. The molten steel is poured from the furnace into molds where it solidifies to form ingots. These steels ingots are placed in a soaking pit where they are heated until their temperature is uniform at about 2200 degree Fahrenheit throughout. They are then taken from the soaking pit and passed through the steel rollers in the rolling mill to form plain or sheet steel. Much of the steel we use in aircraft construction is made in electric furnaces, which allow much better control of the alloying agents than the gas-fired furnaces. These electric furnaces are charged with scrap steel, limestone, and other materials that are used as flux to mix with the impurities in the steel. Carbon electrodes are lowered into the steel and electric arcs from between the steel and the carbon. The intense heat from the arc melts the steel. The impurities from the steel mix with a flux and are drawn off the molten metal. When the impurities have been removed, controlled quantities of whatever elements are needed to alloy with the steel are added, and the furnace is tipped to pour the liquid metal into molds. Number 1. Alloying agents in steel. A. Carbon. Carbon is the most important element found in steel. Mixing with the iron to form compounds of iron carbides called cementite. It is the carbon in the steel that allows it to be heat treated to obtain varying degrees of hardness, strength, and toughness. The greater the carbon content, the better the ability to heat treat, and therefore the higher the tensile strength and the hardness. However, increasing the carbon content decreases the malleability and the bendability of the steel. A high carbon content up to about 0.953 may be used where extreme hardness is needed and malleability is not of primary concern. High carbon steel is used in the manufacture of cutting tools and springs. Low carbon steel, which contains about 0.203 carbon, is used where a great deal of forming or deep drawing is needed and where strength is of minor concern. Medium carbon steel, one having between 0.253 and 0.503 carbon, is used for applications where both strength and ductility of formulity are required. Now, B. Sulfur. Sulfur is one of the more undesirable constituents in steel, and as much of it as possible must be removed in the refining process. Similar causes steel to be brittle when it is being rolled or forged, as it mixes with the iron to form iron sulfides, which are in their liquid state at the temperatures required for this type of fabrication. The effect of any sulfur that is not removed from the steel may be counteracted by using manganese. This converts it into manganese sulfide, which is not detrimental to the steel. C. Manganese. Manganese is alloyed with steel to eliminate some of the oxides and the sulfur from the steel, making it a clean, tough, and uniform metal. Manganese also improves the forging characteristics of the steel by making it less brittle at the rolling and forging temperatures. Now D. Silicon. When this non-metallic element is alloyed with a steel, it acts as a hardener. When it is used in small quantities, it also improves the ductility of the steel. Now E. Phosphorus. These elements raises the yield strength of steel and improves the resistance of low carbon steel to atmospheric corrosion. No more than 0.05% phosphorus is normally used in steel. As more, or it will cause the metal to become brittle when it is cooled. Now F. Nickel. Nickel adds strength and hardness to steel and increases its yield strength, and nickel uses as an alloy shows the critical rate of hardening when the steel is heat treated. This increases the depth of hardening and produces a finer grain structure. Nickel also reduces the tendency of steel to warp and scale when it is heat treated. Nickel is one of the chief ingredients in corrosion resistant or stainless steel. Chromium. G is chromium. This high melting point element is alloyed with steel to increase its strength and wear resistance, as well as its resistance to corrosion. It also gives steel a good measure of hardness. Chromium is usually used in conjunction with other elements such as molybdenum, nickel, and vanadium to give steel the special qualities that are needed in aircraft structure. Chrome vanadium alloy is used when an extremely tough steel is needed for applications such as wrenches and ball bearings. Chrome molybdenum steel has the strength, toughness and lightweight needed to make it the primary steel for aircraft structure and for high strength engine components such as cylinders. Nickel chrome steel is the primary alloy used in the manufacture of aircraft hardware, and because of its strength and hardness at elevated temperatures, tungsten chrome steel is used for high steel cutting tools. In addition to its important function as an alloy elements in the manufacture of steel, chromium may be electrolytically deposited on cylinder walls and bearing journals to provide a hardware resistant surface. Now H. Molybdenum, one of the most widely used alloying elements for aircraft structural steel is molybdenum. It reduces the grain size of the steel and increases both its impact strength and its elastic limit. Molybdenum steel have some of the best wear resistance and fatigue strength of any of the alloys. This accounts for their popularity for high strength structural members and for engine cylinder barrels. Chrome molybdenum and steel responds very well to heat treatment machines easily and is readily welded. Now I. Vanadium. When extremely high strength is required for a steel along with toughness and good ductility, chrome vanadium steel is used. Vanadium used in amounts of up to about 0.20% improves the grain structure and increases both the ultimate tensile strength and the toughness. Most wrenches are made of chrome vanadium steel. Now J. Tungsten. Tungsten, which has an extremely high melting points, brings some of its characteristic into the steel with which it is alloyed. Tungsten alloys are used for breaker contacts in magnetos used and for cutting tools. Tungsten steel retain their hardness even when they operate red hot. Now 2. SAE classification of steel. The Society of Automotive Engineers, that is in bracket SAE, all are capital, has classified steel alloy with a 4-digit numerical index system. The first digit identifies the principal alloying elements in the steel, the second digit the percent of this alloying element, and the last 2 digit the percentage in 100 of the percent of the carbon in the steel. Now 3. Carbon steel. Pig iron contains more than 2% carbon, and when it is refined into steel, the carbon is burned out, and then a controlled amount of carbon is put back into the chromium molten iron. Low carbon steel contains between 0.10 and 0.30% carbon and are classified as SAE 1010 to SAE 1030. Steel. This low carbon steel does not have sufficient strength for aircraft structural applications, and strength for aircraft structural applications, and its usage is limited to secondary structure where the loads are not high. Low carbon steel is easily welded and machines readily, but it does not accept heat treatment satisfactorily. Medium carbon steel contain between 0.30 and 0.50% carbon. The increased carbon makes them accept heat treatment. High carbon steel, which are used for springs, files and some cutting tools, contain between 0.50 and 1.05% carbon. These steels can be heat treated until they are extremely hard. Now 4. Alloy steels. In alloy steel, number A, chrome molybdenum steel. The most familiar steel to the aviation maintenance technician is SAE 4130 steel, commonly known as chrome moly steel. It has, as we can see from the SAE classification, approximately 1% molybdenum and 0.30% carbon. It machines readily is easily welded by either gas or electric arc and responds to heat treatment. Heat treatment SAE 4130 steel has an ultimate tensile strength of about 4 times that of SAE 1025 steel, which makes it an ideal choice for landing gear structures and engine mounts. The toughness and wear resistance of chrome molybdenum steel makes it a good material for engine cylinders and other highly stressed engine parts. Now B, nickel steel. SAE 2330 steel, which contains 3% nickel and 0.30% carbon, is used for aircraft hardware such as bolts, nuts, rods, ends, and pins. Now C, nickel chromium steel. Nickel toughness steel and chromium hardness its. Both elements give steel desirable characteristics for use in high strength structural application. Nickel chrome steel such as SAE 4130, 3250 and 3435 are used for forged and machine parts, where high strength, ductility, shock resistance and toughness are required. Now D, stainless steel. This is a characteristic of corrosion resistant steels that have large amounts of chromium and nickel alloy with the steel. These steels do not normally use the SAE classification but are identified by a 3-digit system. The 200 and 300 series of stainless steels are known as authentic steels and contain a large percentage of chromium and nickel, and in the case of 200 series, some manganese. These steels are heated to a temperature above their critical range and held until a structure known as austenite forms. Austenite is a solid solution of pyrolyte, an alloy of iron and carbon, and gamma iron, which is a non-magnetic form of iron. Neither the 200 nor the 300 series of stainless steel can be hardened by heat treated, and both the non-magnetic. The 400 series of stainless steel is a martensitic steel and is a straight chromium alloy. It is magnetic and it may be hardened by rapidly quenching it from an elevated temperature. Now, number 5, heat treatment of steel. Iron is an allotropic metal, which means that it can exist in more than one type of lattice structure depending on the temperature. Molten pure iron will begin to solidify at 2800 degree Fahrenheit. The structure at this point is known as the delta form. Its cooling continues 2554 degree Fahrenheit. The atom will rearrange themselves into the gamma form. Strangely enough, iron in the form is non-magnetic. When the non-magnetic gamma iron is cooled to 1666 degree Fahrenheit, another change occurs. The iron is transformed into non-magnetic form of the alpha structure. If cooling contains to 1414 degree Fahrenheit, the material becomes magnetic with no further change in the lattice structure. Still, in bracket, iron plus carbon exist in two basic forms that are of interest in our consideration of heat treatment. Ferrite in alpha solid solution of iron, into which some carbon has discovered. It exists at temperatures below lower critical temperatures. Above the lower critical temperature, the steel begins to turn into austenite, which consists of gamma iron into which carbon has been dissolved. As the temperature increases, the transformation of ferric into austenite continues until the upper critical temperature is reached. Above the upper critical temperature, the entire structure consists of austenite. Below its lower critical temperature, the carbon which exists in the steel in the form of iron carbide Fe3C is scattered throughout the iron matrix or its molecular structure as a physical mixture. When the steel is heated to its upper critical temperature, the carbon dissolves into the matrix and becomes a solid solution rather than a physical mixture. The steel has now become austenite and the iron is in the gamma form. When the temperature of the steel drops below this critical value, the carbide particles precipitate out of the solution. If the steel is cooled slowly, the particles will be quite large and the steel will be soft. But it is cooled very rapidly. By quenching, the carbon particles will be extremely fine and will effectively bind the molecular structure of the steel together, making it hard and strong. The critical temperature and the ultimate strength the steel will develop vary with the alloying agents. But the most important factor in the amount of low carbon steel will not heat treat satisfactorily because of the small amount of carbon, but as the amount of carbon is increased, the steel gains the ability to be hardened and strengthened by heat treatment. This occurs up to about 0.80% carbon. Beyond this, the hardness does not increase, but its wear resistance improves with the increase in the amount of carbon. Now, in this annealing, if steel is heated to about 50 degree Fahrenheit above its critical temperature and is held there until the carbon goes into solid solution with the matrix and then allowed to cool very slowly, the carbon that precipitates out will be in large particles that do not bind the matrix tightly. The steel will be soft and ductile and may be easily formed or worked. The temperature and cooling rates vary with the alloy, but for annealing they are normally above 1600 degree Fahrenheit. The steel may be cooled by leaving it in the furnace by shutting off the heat so it will cool slowly, or by packing the steel in hot sand or ashes to insulate it so the heat will conducted away slowly. Now B. Normalizing. Steel that has been forged, welded or machined usually has stresses left within the structure that could cause failure, so this stress must be relieved by a process known as normalizing. The steel is heated to about 100 degree Fahrenheit above its upper critical temperature and held until this temperature is uniform throughout. Then it is removed from the furnace and allowed to cool in steel air. The particles of carbon that precipitate out are not as large as those formed when the steel is annealed, but the molecular stresses are relieved. Now C. Hardening. If the steel is to be hardened, it is heated above its critical temperature so the carbon can enter into the uniform solution with the iron matrix and is then cooled rapidly by quenching it in water, oil or brine. The speed of the quench is determined by the quenching medium. Oil provides the slowest quench and brine the most rapid. If the quench is quite quick enough, in sufficient time is allowed for the carbon to precipitate out and it becomes trapped in the solution. The resultant structure is known as martensite and is supersaturated solid solution of a carbon in an iron matrix. Although martensite is the hardest possible structure, it is not desired result of heat treating. Martensite is far too hard and brittle for most applications, and the final product must be obtained by tempering. Now D is tempering. The hardened steel may be tempered or have some of the hardened drawn out by heating it to a temperature considerably below its critical temperature and holding it there until it has reached this temperature throughout. It is then allowed to cool to room temperature in still air. Tempering not only reduces hardness, it will also relieve stress and improve the ductility and toughness of the steel. Now in this one, determining the temperature of steel. If we need to heat treat steel and do not have a pyrometer to measure its temperature, we can make a reasonable estimate of its temperature by observing its color. Now in this figure, we see the relationship between the color of steel and its temperature. For example, if we want to anneal a piece of chrome molybdenum steel in bracket SAE 4130, we to look up its annealing temperature in the chart of figure and see that it is between 1525 degree and 1575 degree Fahrenheit. In figure, we find that the steel has a temperature of 1550 degree Fahrenheit when it is heated to a bright red. To harden this same steel, we would heat it until it is not quite so bright and it was for annealing and then quench it in while. When steel is hardened, it becomes extremely brittle, and if we temper or raw it to relieve some of its hardness and brittleness, if we first polish a part of the steel so we can see it bright, shiny metal surface, we then heat the part and wash this area to see the way the oxides that form change color. The first oxide to form is a pale yellow, then the oxide progresses through brown, into the blues. When the oxide on SAE 4130 steel is between a bright and a pale blue, the heat should be removed and the steel allowed to cool in still air. This will temper it to a tensile strength of around 2 lakh psi. Now number 2, tempering small tools. We find a practical example of tempering steel when we make screwdrivers, blades, chisel or punches from steel rod. Now in this figure, this steel has a high carbon content and is usually obtainable in the normalized condition. After we have shaped the steel, we heat it to a cherry red color and quench it in while. When we polish a portion and reheat until the proper oxide color appears. When we quench the steel again, it should have the proper hardness. Now E, case hardening. Case hardening, wearing surface in aircraft engines and landing gear systems are often hardened, while the core of the material is allowed to remain soft and tough. There are two ways this is done. The first is a process known as carburizing, in which controlled amount of carbon are added to the surface of low carbon steel. Nitriding is the other means of the case hardening, and the hard surface is produced in the process by converting the surface of the metal into an extremely hard aluminum nitride. Now in this carburizing, what is carburizing? There are three methods that can be used to increase the carbon content of the surface of a low carbon steel. Pure pack carburizing is done by enclosing the part in a fire clay container and packing it with a carbon rich material such as charcoal. The container is sealed and placed in a furnace where it is heated to 1700 degree Fahrenheit, that is in bracket 927 degree centigrade. Carbon monoxide gas forms from the heated charcoal and since it cannot escape, its carbon combines with the gamma iron in the surface of the steel. The depth to which the carbon penetrates depends upon the soaking time. Gas carburizing is similar to pack carburizing, except that the carbon monoxide is produced by a gas rather than a solid material. In this process, as with pack carburizing, the carbon from carbon monoxide combines with the gamma iron and forms a high carbon surface. Liquid carburizing process produces the high carbon surface when the part is heated in a molten bath or sodium cyanide or barium cyanide, which supplies the needed carbon. Any portion of the part that should not be case hardened may be copper plated. The carbon will not infuse into the copper plated surface. Now number 2 is nitriding. Nitriding differs from carburizing in that the part to be hardened is first heat treated to give it the characteristic we want. That is, it is hardened, tempered and then ground to the proper dimensions. It is then placed in a special retort and heated to a temperature of approximately 1000 degree Fahrenheit, that is in bracket 538 degree centigrade, and is surrounded by ammonia gas. In bracket formula of ammonia gas is NH3. The high temperature breaks the ammonia down into a nitrogen and hydrogen. The nitrogen reacts with the steel and with any of the nitride formers in the steel, such as aluminum, chromium, molybdenum or vanadium, to form the appropriate nitrides. The nitride surface is extremely thin, with its thickness depending on the length of time it is exposed to the ammonia gas. The hardness of the surface gradually decreases with depth until it reaches that of the core. Aircraft engine crankshafts and cylinder walls are commonly nitrided for increased wear resistance, but these surfaces have one serious problem. They are highly susceptible to pitting, corrosion and must be protected from the air with a coating of white. Now number 6 is relationship between hardness and strength. As we have seen in the section on the heat treatment of steel, the smaller the carbon particles that are in solution with the matrix of the steel, the harder and stronger the steel will be. It is because of this fact that there is a definite relationship between strength and hardness of steel. This relationship does not necessarily exist, however, with metals other than steel. There are two systems of measuring the hardness of steel that we find commonly used in shops, where the steel is heat treated, the Brinell and the Rockwell systems. Now in A, the Brinell hardness system. The Brinell hardness tester uses a hydraulic forces to impress a spherical penetrator into the surface of the metal being tested. An extremely hard 10 mm diameter ball is forced down onto the surface of the metal by a 3000 kg force for steel or a 500 kg force for non-ferrous metals. This force is hydraulically applied by a hand pump on the tester, and the amount of the force is read on the pressure gauge. When the metal is removed from the tester, the diameter of the impression is measured with a spectral calibrated microscope. This diameter is converted into the Brinell number by using the chart furnished with the tester. In the figure, the chart is which shows the relationship between Brinell number and the tensile strength of the steel. The steel has a Brinell number of 400. For example, it has a tensile strength of 2,01,000 psi. Now B, the Rockwell hardness system. The Rockwell hardness tester gives us the same information. Now before that I am giving a picture of the Brinell hardness tester. The Rockwell hardness system. The Rockwell hardness tester gives us the same information the Brinell tester gives, except that it measures the depth to which the penetrator sinks into the material rather than the diameter of the impression. The material to be tested is thoroughly clean. The two opposite surfaces are ground flat and parallel, and all scratches are polished out of them. It is then placed on the anvil of the tester and is raised up against the penetrator by a hand wheel operated screw. A 10 kg load called the minor load is applied and the machine is zeroed. A major load is then applied and the dial on the tester indicates the depth of the penetrator sinks into the metal. Instead of indicating the depth of penetration is thousandth of an inch, it indicates the Rockwell numbers on either a red or a black scale. There are three types of penetrators: a conical diamond, or a 1/16 inch ball, or a 1/8 inch ball. There are three types. There are also three major loads: 600 kilograms, 100 kilograms, and 150 kilograms. The two most commonly used Rockwell scales are the B scale for soft metals, which uses a 1/16 ball penetrator and 100 kg major load, and the C scale for hard metals, which uses the conical diamond penetrator and a 150 kg major load. Now figure is this. Figure gives the relationship between the C scale, Rockwell hardness, and the tensile strength of steel. A steel that tests Rockwell C40 has a tensile strength of 1,86,000 psi. High temperature alloys. Because of the need of metals that can withstand the extremely high temperature found in the gas turbine engines after burners, thrust reverser, etc., and because of the high temperatures generated by an air function of air supersonic speed, it is because necessary for development alloys which retain their strength even though hot. The products of the high temperature metal research have led to the development of super alloys, which has utilized a wide variety of metal elements in combination to produce the desired result. High temperature super alloys are those containing high percentage of nickel, cobalt, chromium, molybdenum, titanium, and other alloying elements that make them particularly resistant to heat and corrosion and retain high tensile strength at elevated temperatures such as 1000 to 2200 degree Fahrenheit, that is in bracket 538 to 1205 degree centigrade. The qualities given consideration in this selection of high temperature alloys for use in the hot part of gas turbine engines include thermal stability, tensile strength at elevated temperatures, low cycle fatigue strength, stress rupture properties, hot corrosion resistance, and oxidation resistance. Hundreds of alloys, temperature alloys, have been developed and tested. However, relatively few of these are in extensively use. Some of these are described briefly as follows. Now, HEST alloy X. This alloy consists of approximately 50% nickel, 22% chromium, 9% molybdenum, and 0.07% carbon. With small amount of other elements, it is used extensively for combustion liners and transition ducts in turbine engines. This alloy is manufactured by the Stellite division of the Cabot Corporation. Stellite alloy S. This is another Stellite division alloy used in gas turbine engines for hot sections where low thermal expansion is requirement. This alloy has a high nickel content with 15.5% chromium and 14.5% molybdenum, together with small amounts of other alloying elements. The desirable properties of the alloy are low thermal expansion, good high temperature strength, excellent surface stability, excellent thermal stability, and excellent fabricability. Hennes alloy number 25, also known as Hennes steel number 25. This alloy has had extensive use in the gas turbine industry for combustion liners, nozzle vanes, shrouds, spray bars, and flame holders. It is cobalt-based alloy that is particularly well adapted to temperatures in the range of 1800 to 21 degree Fahrenheit, that is in bracket 980 to 1150 degree centigrade. It contains approximately 50% or more of cobalt, which makes it quite expensive. Hennes alloy number 188. This is one of the newer cobalt-based alloys manufactured by the Stellite division of the Cabot Corporation. It contains about 40% cobalt, 22% chromium, 14% nickel, 14% of tungsten, plus small amount of elements. Tungsten chemical formula is W. It is considered by some of the best combustor alloy available. The high temperature strength, surface stability, and a fabricability of the alloy are all excellent because of its high breakability of the alloy are excellent because of its high cobalt and tungsten content. It is somewhat expensive. Typical components are gas turbine engines produced from alloy number 188 are combustion liners, transition ducts, afterburner liners, turbine nozzle buffers, turbine midframe liners, and turbine air seal rings. It can operate satisfactorily in temperature up to 1800 degree Fahrenheit or in bracket 982 degree centigrade. Hennes alloy number 625. This is a nickel-based alloy containing approximately 2/3 nickel with a substantial quantities of chromium, molybdenum, and colbium. That is in brackets capital C, small b, the chemical formula of columbium. It is used for the hot parts of the gas turbine engines, and in the cast condition is used for turbine blades and vanes. Now in colon alloy number 617. This is nickel-based alloy developed by Huntington Alloys Inc. Incorporate, a subsidiary of International Nickel Company Incorporate in bracket INCO, for use in extremely high temperature situation. It is more than 1/2 nickel and also has substantial quantities of chromium, cobalt, and molybdenum. It is used for combustion liners, transition ducts, and other hot section of turbine engines. Hennes alloy number 263. This alloy was developed by Rolls-Royce Limited and was licensed to the Stellite division of the Cabot Corporation for manufacture. This is a nickel-based alloy with more than 50% nickel plus chromium, cobalt, and molybdenum with smaller amount of titanium and aluminium. It is used primarily for the hot parts of Rolls-Royce engines. The alloy listed in the foregoing paragraphs are used primarily for the hot parts made of sheet steel. In addition to these are alloys developed especially for causing to manufacture turbine blades and nozzle vanes. In earlier engines, the nickel alloy with substantial quantities of cobalt were used for a turbine blades and nozzle vanes. Two of the alloys were known as WASP alloy and the Rennie 41 developed by Pratt & Whitney Aircraft and General Electric respectively. Currently, cobalt-based alloys such as MAR M-509, AMF-5382 and X40 are used for turbine blades and nozzle vanes. Nickel-based alloy for the same purposes are Rene 80, IN 713, IN 1-100, UDMET-41, UDMET-700, PWA-655, PWA 1455 and PWA 1422. The foregoing alloys are only a few of the special alloys designed for the use under high temperature conditions. In aircraft, jet engines and missiles, however, their descriptive give an indication of the extensive developments that have been made by manufacturer to meet that requirements of modern technology. Now figure gives the ultimate tensile strength of the sum of the high temperature alloys. In the graph, the stress value in the SI metric system are given in megapascals. 1 megapascal 10 lakhs pascals is equal to approximately 145 psi. 1 ksi is equal to 1000 psi. See the appendix for conversion factors.